The sun was dropping behind the drowned rooftops when our rescue boat turned into what used to be Maple Street. The flood had swallowed everything: cars, fences, street signs, leaving only the tops of mailboxes and the occasional broken chimney sticking above the murky water. We were supposed to check for stranded residents, but something else caught my eye long before any human shapes did. A dark animal silhouette clung to the roof of an old Honda Accord that was almost fully underwater. At first I thought it was a dog, shaken and desperate, until it lifted its head and I saw the pointed ears and wide, wild eyes. A lynx, alone, perched on the last dry surface around. Ryan slowed the motor. Taylor leaned forward, squinting. The lynx didn't flee at the sound of the engine. She didn't bare her teeth or crouch to attack. Instead, she scrambled to the edge of the roof, hopped down toward the passenger window, and dipped her head inside the car before climbing back up again. She repeated the motion: down, inside, up, like she was checking on something. Or someone. I felt a tight pull in my gut. Wild animals didn't behave like that unless there was a reason. Maybe she's trapped, Ryan muttered, but even he sounded unsure. When we moved a few feet closer, the lynx suddenly jumped into the water. She swam straight toward us, her movements clumsy and frantic. For a split second I thought she might try to climb aboard, but instead she let out a short, cracked cry, nothing like a growl, and spun back toward the sinking car. She wasn't attacking. She was signaling. The Accord shifted as the water surged inside, tilting just enough for the lynx to struggle back onto the roof. Her fur was plastered to her ribs, her tail twitching in frantic jerks. She looked at us, then at the window, then at us again, repeating that same trembling sound. Taylor whispered that this wasn't normal. I agreed. A lynx would sooner vanish into the trees than approach people, unless the alternative was worse. I stepped toward the bow of the boat, raising my hands to show I wasn't a threat. The lynx tracked every move, but she didn't retreat. She stood over the passenger window like a guard. The storm had passed hours earlier, but the sky was still heavy and gray, the air thick with leftover rain. The water slapped rhythmically against the Accord, each hit sinking it just a little more. If there was someone inside, we didn't have long. Ryan asked if I saw anything. I leaned forward, trying to angle my view through the smeared glass. The interior was dim, nearly flooded, streaked with mud and debris. Then something small shifted between the seat and the console, a faint, shivering motion. I froze. The lynx let out another strained cry, almost on cue. There's movement, I said quietly. Down low. Something alive. Ryan swore under his breath. Taylor grabbed the rescue light and tried to illuminate the interior, but the angle was terrible and the water kept distorting everything. Still, that tiny movement was unmistakable. The lynx wasn't just surviving. She was protecting, and whatever she was guarding inside that nearly submerged car was running out of time. Ryan kept the engine barely idling as our boat drifted toward the Accord's rear end. The lynx tracked every movement, her paws planted on the roof, her body trembling with cold and fear. Every time we shifted position, she shifted too, always placing herself between us and the open passenger window. She wasn't confused. She wasn't panicking blindly. She was guarding that one spot. Taylor leaned over the railing and whispered that we should try coming in from the driver's side instead. Ryan nodded and adjusted the boat's angle. But the moment he moved us a few yards around the hood, the lynx darted across the roof, slipped once on the wet metal, then planted herself at the opposite window, blocking that one too. I'd never seen anything like it. She wasn't trying to escape. She wasn't acting territorial either. She was following the window, whatever was inside it. The water slapped rhythmically against the car as the current carried debris past us. A floating rake, a broken shutter, an overturned garbage bin. Each surge tilted the Accord a little more. Inside, the water had risen to the seat cushions. We didn't have much time. I crouched closer, trying to peer through the smeared, mud-streaked glass. The interior was dark, flooded almost to the console. Something small shifted again, a tiny tremor of movement, barely visible. Taylor squinted, wiping rain from her eyes. Could be a dog, she murmured. Or a cat someone left inside. Ryan shook his head. The lynx wouldn't fight this hard for a house pet. He was right, and we all knew it. The lynx suddenly stiffened. Her ears flattened, her tail lowered, and she let out another one of those short, broken calls. Not a warning, not aggression, Something closer to a plea. I felt it again. That pull in my chest, the one that told me we were dealing with something bigger than a wild animal in distress. I stood slowly, palms open, murmuring that we weren't here to hurt her. She didn't lunge. Instead, she dipped her head and peered into the window again, whining softly. "She's calling to it," Taylor said quietly. "Whatever's in there, she knows it's alive." I motioned for Ryan to hold steady. The current tugged at our hull, making the boat rock, but he kept us in position. The Lynx didn't growl this time when I leaned closer. She just watched me, shaking uncontrollably. I pressed my face near the glass. For a moment, all I saw was brown water sloshing against the dashboard. Then, between the passenger seat and the console, I saw a small shape, curled tight, trembling, barely above the rising waterline. Too small to be a dog, too wild to be someone's pet. A tiny, shivering bundle of fur. Before I could say anything, the Lynx jumped from the roof straight into the water again. She swam to the passenger window and hooked her claws onto the frame, pulling her head inside the car. The sound she made, thin, desperate, went straight through me. She wasn't warning us away. She was begging us to understand. Taylor looked at me, wide-eyed. "We need to break a window," she said. "We won't be able to reach from here." Ryan hesitated, eyeing the Lynx. "She won't let us near the side windows. We need a back angle." The rain began to fall harder, pelting the boat, blurring everything. The Accord dipped another inch. Whatever was inside wouldn't survive another 10 minutes. I met the Lynx's eyes as she clung to the frame, water swirling around her chest. I didn't see rage there. I saw terror. "We're getting it out," I said softly. The Lynx blinked slowly, then looked back into the car and let out a tiny sound, barely audible over the rain. That was all the confirmation I needed. I told Ryan to circle us to the rear side window while I kept the Lynx's attention. She didn't attack. She didn't move to stop us. She stayed where she was, guarding, trembling, waiting. She wasn't letting anyone near the window, but she wasn't leaving it either, because whatever she loved was on the other side of that glass. Ryan maneuvered the boat toward the rear side window, careful not to create a wave that might tip the Accord farther underwater. The Lynx didn't try to stop us this time. She stayed clinging to the passenger window, half submerged, watching every move with wide, frantic eyes. Her fur hung in soaked clumps, and the trembling in her limbs had grown worse. She was running out of strength. Taylor braced herself with the rescue hammer. "Tell me when," she said. "Not yet," I murmured. I leaned toward the Lynx again, speaking softly over the rain. "We're helping you. Just stay there. Stay with it." She didn't understand the words, but something in the tone reached her. She shifted just slightly, enough to free the rear side window from her line of defense. That was all we needed. I lifted a hand to Taylor. One sharp strike. The tempered glass cracked in a spiderweb, then gave way completely, shards sinking into the flooded cabin. Muddy water surged through the new opening, swirling around the seats and carrying bits of debris with it. The Lynx flinched but didn't abandon her position. Taylor reached inside, moving slowly, careful not to snag her arm on metal edges. "There's nothing on the seats," she said. "It's all underwater. Check the gap between the passenger seat and the console," I said. She nodded and slid her arm deeper into the cold water. Her expression tensed. "There's something here." My pulse kicked up. Ryan steadied the boat as the current pushed against us. Taylor felt along the narrow space, her fingers searching until they closed around something small. She pulled upward, letting the water drain off as a lightweight bundle emerged, a soaked, tightly wrapped piece of fabric. It looked like an old blanket at first, weighed down by mud and water. But then the blanket shifted. A tiny paw slid free, trembling. My stomach dropped. Taylor's voice cracked. "It's a baby." The Lynx let out a sound that was half yowl, half cry, raw, broken, pleading. She pulled herself higher on the window frame, desperate to see. I moved closer and gently peeled back the corner of the blanket. Inside was a tiny Lynx kit, no bigger than my forearm, fur plastered to its skin, eyes barely open. It let out a thin, rasping breath, its chest struggling against the cold. Someone had wrapped it on purpose. The blanket wasn't random debris. It had been tucked around the kit carefully. Whoever left it here tried to protect it, but had no idea the floodwaters would reach this street. Or worse, they panicked and thought leaving it in a car would keep it safe. Either way, the decision had nearly killed it. "We need to get it warm now," Taylor said, her voice urgent. She lifted the kit toward me, and I took it with both hands, cradling it against my chest. Its body was frighteningly limp. The lynx whined, scraping her claws against the frame, desperate to get closer but too exhausted to lift herself fully out of the water. When I held the kit where she could see it, she froze. Her ears lifted. Her trembling eased for just a moment. She knew. This was her baby. "We've got you," I whispered. "We've got your little one." But the moment I tried to turn back toward the boat's interior, the lynx panicked. She launched herself from the window, splashing into the water and swimming straight toward me. Ryan jerked backward, preparing to push her off, but I stopped him. "She's not attacking," I said firmly. "She's following the kit. Let her come closer." The lynx reached the hull and hooked her front paws over the edge, panting hard. She made another trembling sound, softer now, more desperate than threatening. I lowered the kit again, letting her see it clearly. She leaned forward, sniffing, uttering a soft rumble deep in her chest. Taylor's voice shook. "We need to get moving. This car is going under." She was right. The Accord gave a groan as more water filled the cabin, tilting dangerously. If it rolled, it could drag us with it. "Ryan, get us clear," I said. He eased the throttle, and the boat drifted away from the sinking vehicle. The lynx didn't hesitate. She pushed off and swam alongside us, refusing to let distance form between her and the kit. That alone told me everything. Someone might have placed the kit in that car, but the mother had never left it. Not for a second. Ryan steered us away from the sinking Accord as gently as he could, but even that small shift sent ripples across the surface. The lynx swam after us instantly, refusing to fall behind. She was barely keeping herself afloat, her strokes uneven, her head dipping under between breaths. But she never took her eyes off the kid in my arms. Taylor wrapped a dry towel around the tiny body, whispering updates as she checked the kit's breathing. It was shallow and erratic. The blanket someone had wrapped it in was soaked, providing more weight than warmth. Every minute counted now. "She won't stop following," Ryan said, glancing at the lynx beside us. "We can't let her climb in. She'll panic inside the boat." "I'm not letting her fall behind either," I said. "Keep us steady. Slow." The lynx reached the hull again and hooked her claws over the edge, dragging her soaked body upward. She wasn't attacking. She was trying to reach the kit. Her chest heaved, her sides hollow with exhaustion. I knelt and angled the kit so she could see him. Her ears twitched, and a low, trembling rumble rose from her throat. Not a threat, a plea. "You stay with us," I murmured. "We're taking him somewhere safe." The lynx pressed her forehead lightly against the metal hull, as if begging me not to take him away. The gesture hit harder than anything else that day. We moved toward the nearest dry patch of land, a sloping driveway that rose just high enough above the floodline. It wasn't ideal, but it was the fastest place where animal control and wildlife rehab staff could reach us. As the shoreline approached, the lynx slowed. She treaded water anxiously, too unsure to follow the boat up the shallow incline. Her eyes flicked between the kit and the trees beyond the driveway. Her instincts were torn in two. "Let me try," I said. Ryan hesitated. "Just be careful." I stepped to the bow and sat low, making myself smaller. The lynx paddled closer. I lowered the kit toward her, not enough for her to grab him, just enough that she saw we weren't hiding him. She lifted her head toward him and released a soft, shaking chirp. The kit stirred weakly in response. "That's right," I whispered. "He's okay. We're helping." For the first time since we found her, the lynx stopped trembling. Her breathing steadied. She rested both paws on the hull and leaned her weight forward until her nose was nearly touching the towel. Taylor held her breath. Ryan froze. But nothing violent happened. The lynx simply closed her eyes for a moment, touching the edge of the towel with the tip of her nose. Then she opened them again and looked straight at me. A decision passed between us, wordless but unmistakable. She trusted me. When the boat nudged against the driveway slope, the lynx backed away a few feet, treading water, uncertain about the sudden change in terrain. I climbed out first, keeping the kit close to my chest. The lynx swam in a small circle, whining softly. She didn't leave, but she didn't dare climb onto the shallow rocks either. "Bring her closer to us," Taylor said gently. "Maybe she'll follow." I walked a few steps up the driveway and knelt, holding the kit where she could still see him. The lynx edged toward the incline, paws brushing the underwater gravel. She hesitated, her instincts battling between fear of humans and the need to stay near her baby. "You can come," I whispered. "We won't hurt you." It took nearly a full minute of quiet coaxing before she finally placed one paw on the rising ground, then another. She was shaking again, this time from cold and sheer exhaustion. She staggered slightly as she climbed out of the water. The moment she reached dry ground, she lowered her head toward the kid again, sniffing him with a trembling desperation. Then she pressed her forehead gently against my knee. Taylor covered her mouth with her hand. Ryan looked away, blinking hard. But it lasted only a moment. The distant sound of approaching vehicles, a wildlife response team, echoed across the flooded neighborhood. The lynx's ears flicked upward. She looked at the trees behind us, then at the kid, then at me. Fear returned to her eyes. She took one step back, another, and before I could stop her, she turned and bounded toward the closest stand of trees, limping, stumbling, but determined. "Let her go," Taylor said softly. "She's scared." I nodded, though my chest tightened. We had the kid. But the mother, who had fought through an entire flood to keep him alive, was now alone somewhere in the battered forest. And I couldn't shake the feeling that she hadn't wanted to leave. She had simply run out of trust and strength to stay. A week after the rescue, the town was still drying out. Streets that had looked like rivers were now coated in silt, and the air carried a heavy, earthy smell that clung to everything. Fallen branches littered sidewalks, and cars lay wedged against fences where the water had left them. In some places, you could still see water lines halfway up the walls of houses. The storm had passed, but its shadow lingered in every soaked corner of the neighborhood. Still, despite all of that, my thoughts kept circling back to only one place: the Wildlife Rehab Center, where the tiny Lynx kid had spent the last week fighting for his life. Dr. Mason met me at the door every morning, his expression always the same mix of caution and hope. The kid had survived the impossible: extreme hypothermia, near drowning, and the shock of prolonged exposure. But he remained terrifyingly fragile. One infection, one drop in temperature, one missed feeding, and everything could fall apart. But on the 7th morning, the moment I stepped into the rehab room, I knew something had shifted. The little kid, who had barely moved for days, lifted his head. His cloudy eyes followed me with slow intention, and when I leaned closer, he let out a faint, rasping chirp. It was small, but it was life. "He's stabilizing," Dr. Mason said quietly, though I could hear the relief in his voice. "But he won't be releasable alone. Young lynx learn everything from their mothers: hunting, territory signals, danger cues. Without her, he'll never survive in the wild." I didn't need the explanation. I'd felt it the moment we pulled him from that car. Their connection had been unmistakable. The mother's frantic attempts to reach him, the way she'd pressed her head against the boat, begging us not to take him too far. She had not abandoned him. She had simply run out of strength. And if I didn't try to bring them back together, she might never recover from losing him. So that evening, after my shift ended, I returned to the flooded neighborhood. The water had retreated enough to reveal the sloping driveway where we had first carried the kit to safety. The ground was soft beneath my boots, the mud still rippling where rainwater trickled down from the higher lots. I brought a container of food approved by the rehab center and the blanket the kid had slept on, still warm with his scent. I placed them near the tree lean and waited. Nothing moved. Not a shadow, not a sound. The next night, I returned. Again, nothing. But on the 3rd evening, the food was gone. And in the mud, just beyond the driveway, were tracks, rounded pads, no claw marks, light and precise. Lynx tracks. She was alive, and she was still searching. On the 4th evening, I didn't go alone. Dr. Mason and a field biologist named Hall joined me. We brought the kit in a padded carrier, not to release him immediately, but to let his scent spread and guide her in. The moment we unzipped the carrier halfway, the kit stirred and let out a tiny cry. Weak, but unmistakable. Minutes dragged into nearly an hour. The forest felt frozen, as though every creature was holding its breath. Even the wind seemed to quiet. Then, a crack of a twig. Hall stiffened first. "Left side," he whispered. A shadow moved between the cedar trunks, slow and deliberate. Then she stepped out. The mother lynx looked thinner than before, her gait uneven, but her eyes burned with purpose. She focused entirely on the carrier. She didn't flinch at our presence. She didn't scan for escape routes. Every part of her was tuned to the kit inside. I knelt carefully and unzipped the carrier fully. The kit blinked at the fading light and released a soft, wavering chirp, stronger than before. The mother froze at the sound. Her ears twitched. Then she took one hesitant step forward, then another. Her breathing grew fast and shallow, as though she was wrestling with every instinct screaming at her to stay away from humans. But her need to reach her baby was stronger. I eased the kid out of the carrier and placed him gently on a patch of dry leaves. He wobbled, then steadied himself, releasing a tiny call toward her. What happened next was a blur of instinct and emotion. The lynx rushed forward in 3 swift, silent movements. She sniffed him feverishly, nudging him, checking him, confirming he was real and alive. When he answered her with a faint chirp, she let out a long, trembling breath that sounded like pure relief. Then she looked at me, not with fear, not with aggression, with recognition. A moment passed, a single, quiet acknowledgement of what we had done for her. And then she picked him up gently by the scruff. Her jaw trembled, but she held him steady. Hall whispered that we shouldn't follow. I nodded. Some reunions weren't meant to be watched. The lynx backed into the forest, disappearing between the cedars. Her tail flicked once, almost like a final signal, before melting into the shadows. Relief washed over me in a way I hadn't expected. I sat down in the damp leaves, letting the moment sink in. The kit was where he belonged, but the story didn't end there. 3 days later, while hiking a maintenance trail near the rehab center, I felt the distinct sensation of being watched. I turned slowly. There she stood, 20 yards away, her kit beside her. The little one looked stronger already, steadier on his paws. She didn't approach and she didn't flee. She simply watched. For several long seconds, the world felt still. Then she blinked once. Slow, deliberate, not fear, not hesitation. A different choice entirely. And somehow, unmistakably, it felt like a thank you. By the time I blinked back, she was already gone. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss new stories. And now just click the playlist or the next video on your screen.